Morning, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. Thank you for watching us from Singapore to Iceland this morning. Lots in the Prime Minister's inbox. He's on the offensive, trying to stop a war in Ukraine, but at home on the defensive with fresh pressure over parties and PPE this morning. Big news too, as the government's Levelling Up paper is revealed. The Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove, on the show, as is the shadow Levelling Up Secretary, Lisa Nandy. What does that even mean? We'll be asking. It's Wednesday, the 2nd of February.
I'm live in Wolverhampton, which is getting a share of funding aimed at breathing new life into areas outside of the southeast. But critics say there are no new ideas and no new money.
PPE, parties and Putin, the three Ps on the Prime Minister's mind with fresh revelations this morning.
I'm here in Kiev as Vladimir Putin and Boris Johnson trade diplomatic barbs, and as the president of this country warns of a fully fledged European war.
A resignation and a loss of sponsorship. The fallout after a Scottish football club signed a player a civil court ruled is a rapist. Weaponising our grief, Jimmy Savile's victims call on Boris Johnson to withdraw his Commons comment to Sir Keir Starmer, referencing the sex offender. The Labour leader gave us his reaction yesterday on the programme.
It is a ridiculous slur peddled by right-wing trolls.
Kids in hazmat suits. Our Beijing correspondent investigates China's COVID preparations as the clock ticks down to the Winter Olympics. Also on this morning's breakfast programme for you, food for thought. We'll examine what the cost of living crisis means for you and your kitchen cupboard.
Don't worry about a thing, 'cause every little thing gonna be alright.
And your earworm for this morning, ladies and gentlemen. I was singing and reading that at the same time. Bob Marley is in the news, but why? Stay tuned and we'll tell you. Meantime, three Ps on the Prime Minister's mind today: Putin, parties and PPE. But another P making news at home. That's their new policy announcement on levelling up to spend more money outside of the southeast. Plenty to talk to the Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove about shortly. First, let's take a look at the Levelling Up white paper. It runs to 400 pages and sets out a strategy to spread opportunity across the country by 2030. It includes a promise to increase investment in research and development outside the southeast by at least 40%. Bus and rail services will be improved to bring them closer to standards in London. And more areas will get access to 5G broadband. There are also pledges to improve maths and literacy rates in the worst performing primary schools. And there could be a shake-up of local government with more powers devolved over issues like transport and elected county mayors. Money is also being made available to regenerate 20 town and city centres, starting with Sheffield and Wolverhampton. Lisa's standing by for us in Wolverhampton this morning, one of those areas that should receive quite a lot of money. She's with us now. Tell us more, Lisa. Good morning.
Morning. This former brewery site is already starting to be transformed here in the city. It's home to a school and university, but around about there is plenty of disused areas which need regeneration, and the levelling up money is going towards creating more than 1,000 new homes on the derelict parts of the site, and they're going to create what's called sustainable, walkable and beautiful neighbourhood for people. Ministers are saying there's also millions more going to be spent on the city, and they're also going to have the Levelling Up headquarters based here, and they're recruiting for civil servants to staff that. So Wolverhampton and Sheffield are the first of 20 areas to get a share of this £1.5 billion of Levelling Up cash. But what Labour is saying is that the money isn't new. It was already announced.
Lisa, thank you. The man in charge of all of that is the Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove. He's with us now. Good morning. Thank
Hi,
you
good morning,
for joining
Kate.
us on the programme. Is any of this money new?
Well, I think that's a bogus argument because the Chancellor gave us a huge cheque in the spending review and now we are spending it. And we're making sure in Wolverhampton, in Sheffield and in other areas that we put our money where our mouth is and that we make sure that money which in the past was spent too much in London and the South East is now spent in the North and Midlands where it's needed.
OK, although, of course, there are quite a few areas in London, I'm thinking Tower Hamlets just down the road, that need quite a lot of money themselves.
Well, there's inequality in London, and you're absolutely right. Tower Hamlets, Barking and Dagenham, they need support as well, and the government is working with the Mayor of London in order to do that. But one of the big problems that we have as a country is the geographical inequality. London and the South East, an economic powerhouse, but the North and Midlands, not so much. And that's why we need to invest in schools, in skills. That's why we need to improve wages. That's why we need to make sure that we level up across the country.
People who've been forgotten. Forgotten by whom?
Overlooked and undervalued for years.
By whom?
Well, by politicians. The Brexit referendum was a wake-up call, as well as a clear commandment to leave the European Union. It was also a way of saying to people in SW1, people like me, look, it's vital that you change the economic model of this country. It's all very well if people in London and the South East and financial services and others do well. We don't begrudge that, but you've got to listen to us. And in 2019, the baton was passed to Boris. There was a clear instruction, deliver for us. We've had 2 difficult COVID years, but now that we're coming out of it, we are making good on that promise by a commitment to improve jobs and wages, by spending more of the science money that is so vital to growth in the North and Midlands, and also by making sure that the schools and colleges that people attend are fit for purpose.
OK, but you guys have been in power for the majority of this century.
Well, there have been mistakes made by parties of both colours. And one of the things in the past is there have been sincere and committed attempts by politicians left and right to deal with this, but nothing as comprehensive or as long-term as the plan that we're setting out today.
Yeah, OK, but you do acknowledge that you guys have been in power for 12 years.
Yes, I do. And one of the things about that is that
So
sometimes...
you've forgotten these people up and down the country.
Well, as I say, there was a wake-up call in 2016. And one of the things that is often, one charge that is often made against governments is that they run out of steam. I think what we're seeing here is a commitment to make sure that, far from running out of steam, we're firing up every engine of the economy. And I think it's also important to recognise that when Boris was elected Prime Minister, there was a new government with a new mission, and that mission was to level up, and we're giving the detail today on how we do that.
And very soon after he took power, of course, he had to deal with a global pandemic.
Absolutely.
And to that end, you had to spend £12.1 billion on PPE, but £8.7 billion of that apparently was wasted. Was that...
Not
That's what the
quite.
latest report is. Was that panic buying? What was that
No,
about?
not quite. Firstly, I'm not going to apologise for the fact that we moved heaven and earth to get all the PPE that people on the front line needed. Now, some of those figures are accountancy markdowns that relate...
8.7 billion?
No, yes, some of it is. Because
What
some
sort
of
of accountants are you using?
Well, the key thing here is that the price that we paid for PPE at the height of the pandemic is greater than the cost now. And that is because everyone was in a global race to find that PPE.
And a lot of it was rubbish and you couldn't use it.
No, more than 97% of it was
so there
absolutely right
we
for the
were so
front line.
excited about those planes that were coming into RAF Bryce Norton that we were sending film crews up there. The stuff was coming in from, I think, I'm right in saying Turkey.
Turkey,
and it
Saudi Arabia,
and it was
China, Hong Kong,
unusable.
globally. No, the overwhelming majority, 97%, was usable, was fit for purpose on the front line. I remember, right at the beginning of the pandemic, my friend, the Shadow Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, the Labour MP, writing to me saying, please, 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 get PPE. And she gave us a list of people that we should contact, including people who were, theatrical, medieval costuming.
Plane coming in RAF Bryce Norton.
Well, quite. And at that
Stuff
point...
that was on that plane was not usable.
At that point, everyone was
Every
screaming
bit
at
of
us, get more PPE, and we got it. And that was the right thing to do at that time. And those figures are, I think, erroneous and inflated. And more importantly,
A bit like what you paid for the PPE.
No, well, at the time, everyone was desperate to get PPE. There were doctors in Germany,
So we were
outside the
panic
German
buying.
parliament,
We were panic buying
complaining
and
that we couldn't get
overpaying.
it. Well, it
There's
wasn't...
no case to answer at all.
No, I'm proud of what we did on PPE.
OK, well, let's see what happens as far as that's concerned. Have your tea.
Thank you.
While I ask you, because you'll need it, when I ask you about what's happening as far as Jimmy Savile and that comment that the Prime Minister made on Monday, I think. This is what he said, just to remind our viewers.
This leader of the opposition, a former director of public prosecutions, Mr. Speaker, so he spent most of his time prosecuting journalists and failing to prosecute Jimmy Savile, as far as I can make out, Mr. Speaker.
As you can imagine, Keir Starmer not at all happy about that. He was on the show yesterday, actually. This is what he said.
It is a ridiculous slur peddled by right-wing trolls.
He's doubled down today, the Prime Minister, it seems, in The Sun, saying that he doesn't want to apologise. Do you think he's got anything to apologise for?
No.
OK. Lindsay Hoyle thinks he has. Lindsay Hoyle said, I'm far from satisfied about the comments. And lawyers for the Savile victims have accused your leader of weaponising their suffering. You still don't think he's got anything to apologise for?
No, I think this is a uniquely sensitive issue and it does need to be handled with care. And I listen with enormous respect to those who act for victims of, the actions of a terrible, terrible criminal. But, and it's not a subject that I want to dwell on because it is uniquely sensitive. It is the case that the CPS apologised for their handling of this case and what happened in 2009. And I think we should acknowledge that an apology was given at the time and respect that.
He wasn't directly involved, Sir Keir Starmer, when he was head of the DPP at the time, or he was the DPP at the time, and he says it's a slur.
Well, I respect Keir's point of view, but I think it is also the case that it's on the record, and indeed he himself acknowledged that errors were made. He, to his credit, brought in a very distinguished lawyer, Alison Levitt, to look at the situation, and then an apology was made. I think we should respect that.
So Lindsay Hoyle is wrong, as are the lawyers for the Savile victims?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in a uniquely sensitive case, Keir Starmer acknowledged that mistakes had been made by the organisation of which he was head. To his credit, he was very clear about those mistakes. He brought in an independent lawyer to look at that, and I think that we should recognise that in doing that, he did the right thing. OK, let's move on to parties, should we? I'm sure that story will continue on, but thank you for your answers for now. Parties investigations, 2 more parties we're being told about in the newspapers today. Apparently, one of them showing that the Prime Minister there's a photograph of him, we haven't seen it yet, we're told that it is available, or will be, of him at the party, at the flat in his own flat above number 11. I always get mixed up between number 10 and number 11 because he's number 10, but the flat's above number 11, is it? It's a little bit bigger. Let's remember what he said on the 8th of December.
I can understand how infuriating it must be to think that the people who have been setting the rules have not been following the rules, Mr. Speaker, because I was also furious to see that clip. I have been repeatedly assured since these allegations emerged that there was no party and that no COVID rules were broken.
He was belting out ABBA hits.
Well, all of these allegations are being investigated by the Metropolitan Police. There's been any number of allegations in the newspapers, but again, we've just been talking about the importance of due process and law, and I think it's only right that we allow the Met to get on with their work, and then appropriate conclusions can be drawn at the end of it.
He must have known if he was in his own flat with lots of people singing ABBA hits, the winner takes it all.
Well, we'll, as I know, have all sorts of allegations and speculation in the media. Fair enough, but the Met are doing their job, and until they've concluded, I don't think it would be right for me to comment.
Come on, he knows whether he was in the flat or not, singing ABBA hits.
Well, all I would say is that I wasn't in...
No, but he was.
Well, there are all sorts of allegations that have been made. I know that some of the allegations that have been made, and I don't want to get into a tit for tat, but I know that some of the allegations that have been made in some parts of the media are speculation that is not true, and so therefore I can't act as an automatic fact checker
let me put it this way.
on
If
all
the,
of them.
Of course,
when the
and
Met,
I'm not asking you to. I'm
the
putting
Met
a
are looking at those
specific matter
facts.
to you. If he was in the flat singing "The Winner Takes It All" with his missus, when he said that he didn't know about any parties, he misled Parliament. Should he resign?
Again, you're asking a hypothetical question.
No,
I think during the pandemic.
Why is that hypothetical?
Well, during the pandemic, I think there were some moments when I may have been sitting at home and working, listening to music and concentrating on my job, while at the same time...
Were you eating birthday cake?
No, but the whole point of...
Was somebody singing happy birthday to you?
Well, the whole point of the Met investigation is that you don't have to ask and I don't have to ask. Officers can ask and they can make sure that they establish all the information. And once they've concluded their investigation, then we can know.
We are, it would appear, a laughingstock. He is straddling the world stage, trying to be very statesmanlike. And we've been looking at some of the quotes this morning. Russia NTV reaction: if it were within the power of Boris Johnson, the report would have vanished into the bowels of the Victorian sewers of the City of London. And this one from the Washington Post: the circus must be... The circus music, forgive me, is winding down for Bojo the clown. We're a laughingstock.
No, I think that when you're quoting from Russian television...
The Washington Post, there you go.
We'll come on to the Washington Post in a second.
Well, let's go with that one then.
No,
if you don't like the other one, are you going to cherry pick? I thought we couldn't cherry pick.
Oh, no, I'll look at both of them.
OK.
First of all, one of the reasons why Russian television is attacking the Prime Minister is the Prime Minister is leading the West's efforts in order to ensure...
What about this one?
It's important to deal with both of them. In order to ensure that we defend Ukraine's territorial integrity against Putin. So, of course, he's going to be attacked by Russia. And a single commentator in an admittedly respectable but still centre-left American newspaper is not representative of world opinion.
Let's try this one then.
But I'll tell you what is happening internationally. And that is, in the Ukraine, there is a recognition that Britain and Poland are its two strongest allies. We were told after Brexit Britain would be on the margins and on the sidelines of the big international issues. But the Prime Minister was welcomed by President Zelensky and Vitaly Klitschko in Ukraine yesterday because our commitment to provide assistance to the Ukraine shows that we are standing tall for democracy, far from being criticised by Democrats internationally. We are leading the fight for democracy, and I wear as a badge of pride the fact that Russian television is attacking our Prime Minister. OK.
What about Sir Malcolm Rifkind? How do you feel about him, former Foreign Secretary?
Old friend of mine.
He says it damages the authority of the British government. Yesterday, he was due to speak to President Putin and was forced to cancel that very important conversation because of his domestic difficulties back home, talking about him having to appear in the House to talk about Sue Gray as opposed to speaking to Putin. And we're out of time, so...
I think Vladimir Putin got the message when the Prime Minister was in the Ukraine yesterday. We've given the Ukraine the weapons it needs to protect itself. We're going to take the sanctions against Russia necessary if there is a single Russian boot that crosses the border there. And so I don't think you necessarily need to dial Vladimir Putin on his mobile phone for him to get the message that he should back off.
OK, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. I know you'll come back and talk to us as soon as we've got the report from the Met.
Absolutely.
There you go. The Guardian leads with Labour's criticism of the government's Levelling Up white paper, saying Michael Gove has failed to squeeze extra funds out of the Treasury for the plans. We just heard what Mr Gove had to say about that. The Metro reports on an investigation which discovered a culture of racism, misogyny and homophobia in the Met Police. The Times splashes with energy bill rebates, which are hoped will help with rising costs. The Mirror warns households could be out of pocket by £2,000 a year due to the cost of living crisis. The Eye splashes with Tories put PM on notice, claiming the Tory party's patience with the Prime Minister is running thin. The Express is attacking the Conservative government for writing off an £8.7 billion loss on protective equipment bought during the pandemic. Mr Gove having none of that either. The Daily Mail points out that including fraudulently obtained COVID loans, that figure is actually £13 billion. The Telegraph claims that hormone replacement therapy will soon be sold over the counter. The Sun reports on the Manchester United footballer Mason Greenwood, who has been arrested for the second time in recent days. And don't forget, at 9 a.m. next Monday, the 7th of February, the Education Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi, will be here to answer all of your questions. You can send them to us via Twitter or email. You can send it to asktheeducationsecretary@sky.uk. Still to come this hour, though, what does Labour make of the government's Levelling Up white paper? We'll be speaking to the Shadow Levelling Up Secretary, Lisa Nandy, in the next hour, top of the next hour. Plus, we'll be speaking to the Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, to find out if government funding is helping level up his constituency. With Boris Johnson deep in crisis talks for the tensions between Ukraine and Russia, speaking to the former ambassador of Ukraine to the EU. The Prime Minister Boris Johnson is to speak with Russian President Vladimir Putin today about the situation on the Ukrainian border. He's been in Kiev speaking about the situation with his Ukrainian counterpart.
I
openly say that this will not be a war between Ukraine and Russia. This will be a full-scale war in Europe.
A further Russian invasion of Ukraine would be a political disaster, a humanitarian disaster. In my view, it would also be, for Russia, for the world, a military disaster as well.
Adam's joining us from Kiev. Hi, Adam. How did it go, these talks?
Yeah, I think the focus switched a little bit from the earlier position of both of these leaders, because Mr. Zelensky, up to this point, had actually been referring to obviously that massive build-up of troops on the border and telling Ukrainians to calm down, not to worry, that the government could deal with it. And yet here he was talking about the potential for what he described there as a fully fledged European war. And Boris Johnson, I think, a bit of a change of tack from what we've heard a lot about the rhetoric from Western leaders about the power of economic sanctions, about trying to effectively dial down the threat of war. Well, here was Boris Johnson talking about exactly that and raising the spectre of Russian mothers worrying about their sons going to war. Both of these people, I think, projecting this image of a potentially bloody, long, complicated, protracted military conflict that could drag in not just Ukraine, but much of Eastern Europe. This didn't feel, to me, like two people who were trying to dial down the tension. And it also came against the backdrop of Vladimir Putin, who was welcoming Viktor Orban, the Hungarian leader. And Mr. Putin has really said that this is all down to NATO expansion, that the Americans are trying to whip up a problem. And his argument is, look, if NATO is expanding into much of Eastern Europe, if Ukraine were to sign up to NATO, then what does Russia do about this area of Crimea, which it says is part of Russia? If it sends troops in there, then that could precipitate a world war. Now, of course, Boris Johnson would say, well, this is all just propaganda, that the build of 100,000 troops, unprecedented number of troops on the border, is completely inexcusable. What I think we didn't get yesterday was any real opportunity to puncture that tension, which means that the rhetoric has been ratcheted up. It certainly did put Mr. Johnson central on the world stage, but was he here as a peacemaker? No, not really.
Adam, thank you. Live from Kiev. Looking at today's other headlines for you now. Manchester United footballer Mason Greenwood remains in custody this morning after he was further arrested on suspicion of sexual assault and threats to kill. The 20-year-old had already spent 2 nights in jail when Greater Manchester Police were granted more time to question him. He's been suspended from playing or training with his club until further notice following his arrest on Sunday. Shoppers have been hit by the highest price rises in almost 10 years, according to the British Retail Consortium. According to the trade association, shop inflation has almost doubled in the last month, with families increasingly struggling to deal with the rising cost of living. And in the next hour, we'll be speaking to Gemma Godfrey from the Time Money Mentor to find out what we can do to cope with the rising cost of living. This is just some of the footage from a new documentary celebrating the achievements of North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un. The almost 2-hour film, titled The Great Year of Victory 2021, was broadcast on the country's state-run television channel. The common crane is making a strong comeback in the UK after becoming extinct here in the 17th century. Wild birds returned in 1979, and a survey found a record 72 pairs, with the population now estimated at more than 200. And the Duchess of Cambridge has taken over from Prince Harry as patron of the Rugby Football League and the Rugby Football Union. Kate starts her new role ahead of the Guinness Six Nations tournament this weekend, where she'll be in direct competition with her husband, who himself is patron of the Welsh Rugby Union. Now, it sounded like a money-making scheme that Del Boy Trotter himself would probably come up with. Here we go. It's the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. It got an Only Fools and Horses twist, and not just talking about the image that they're using there of the Queen. I don't recognise her. The Chinese manufacturer produced thousands of souvenirs in her honour, but like many ideas devised by Peckham's finest, there's always a missing detail that scuppers the deal. Can you see it? All 10,800 teacups, mugs and plates mistakenly have Platinum Jubilee rather than Jubilee printed on them. That has certainly tickled Jerry, our camera operator, this morning. They're now being sold online to both fans of the Queen and the famous series. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has entered the row over Scottish Championship side Raith Rovers and its decision to sign a player who was said to be by a civil court judge to be a rapist. She backed best-selling author and lifelong Rovers fan Val McDermott, who has ended her support for the club and cancelled her shirt sponsorship. Let's find out more with Ashna in the newsroom. Hi, Ashna. Tell us more about this story.
Yeah, the Fife Football Club is coming under some mounting pressure because of this new signing of a new striker called David Goodwillie. Now, he has been signed on a 2-year deal, but it's not his football talent which is drawing criticism, more so his background. Back in 2017, he was ruled to be a racist in a civil court case. He never faced a criminal trial at the time over this rape accusation. Prosecutors said that there wasn't enough evidence, but he was ordered to pay the victim a large sum of money. But fast forward to today, and he is signed to this football club, but loads of people are criticising him, including Val McDermott, who is a successful crime writer over in Scotland. She is the club sponsor too, and she is distancing herself from him, saying, "I've cancelled next season's shirt sponsorship over this disgusting and despicable move." She says this shatters any claim to be a community or family club. Joining her in cutting ties, Kay, is the women's side captain Tyler Rattray. She says, after 10 long years playing for Raith, "It's gutting I have given up now because they have signed someone like this and I want nothing to do with it. It was good being captain of Raith while it lasted." The football club, however, have defended their decision. They say David is a proven goal scorer, while acknowledging the gravity of what happened 10 years ago. They go on to say, "As a club, we fully support and encourage rehabilitation, and many factors influenced our signing." But the last sentence of the statement reads, "First and foremost, this was a football-related decision." This hasn't stopped, though, a number of people resigning from the club, including 2 directors, and joining the condemnation is the First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon. OK, thank you, Ashna. In other news for you, a new Bob Marley exhibition is coming to London. But don't worry about a thing. Everything's going to be all right. We couldn't chat about his music, though, without hearing a little bit.
Don't worry about a thing.
I want to sing. I bet you do too.
Gonna be all right.
You were doing this, weren't you, at home while you were having your toast? This new exhibition takes a look at the star's musical legacy, but also his significance as a political figure. The exhibit will feature multimedia memorabilia, which has never been seen before. OK, here's a bit more.
Well, jam it.
I prefer the other one, don't you?
I wanna jam it with you.
Apparently Laura likes that one, I'm not sure. That's why it's there anyway, she's the boss. With a career spanning almost 20 years, Marley was considered to be one of the pioneers of reggae music. He also ranks as one of the best-selling music artists of all time. How many records do you think he sold? 75 million. The exhibition at London's Saatchi Gallery opens today. Looking at this happy landings, let's have a look. Doesn't seem to apply. Have a quick listen.
Easy, 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 easy. Oh my God!
Yeah, I can still hear Bob Marley as well. Here's the terrifying moment a plane was forced to abort its landing at Heathrow Airport when faced with strong winds from Storm Corrie. Almost down, almost down, almost down. Had to go round. The British Airways jet arriving from Aberdeen yesterday morning initially touched down before braking sharply to the left and beginning its go-around procedure. The pilot successfully managed to land the plane on the second attempt. Of course he did, because he's one of BA's finest. Or it could have been a she. Quick look at the weather.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Next few days will be mild with some rain around at times, but Friday looks briefly colder. Most places having a mild and cloudy start to the day with patchy light rain mainly confined to the north.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, records have been broken for the single longest bolt of lightning. Let's have a quick look. Not quite sure what I'm looking at, but wow. This image shows a single flash of lightning in the sky covering 3 states in the US. The lightning bolt extended 477 miles across Texas, Louisiana and Mississippi. I'll take their word for it. Still to come this hour, speaking to the Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, about what the government's levelling up plan means for his constituency. Stay tuned. Good morning again, everybody. Our top stories for you so far this morning. The government unveils its long-awaited plans to level up the gap between richer and poorer parts of the UK, saying it will shift power and money to the north. Boris Johnson dodges questions relating to newspaper reports, claiming he attended 2 more lockdown-breaking parties being investigated by the Met. And he's going to be speaking to the Russian president today about the Ukraine crisis. But one of Moscow's top diplomats has told Sky News that British diplomacy is making the situation worse. 3 Ps on the Prime Minister's mind today: Putin, PPE and more Downing Street parties. Newspaper reports this morning suggest that Boris Johnson did attend a party in his flat on the 13th of November when ABBA was played after Dominic Cummings left his Downing Street role. I asked the Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove about the allegations.
There are all sorts of allegations that have been made. I know that some of the allegations that have been made, and I don't want to get into it for that, but I know that some of the allegations that have been made in some parts of the media are speculation that is not true, and so therefore I can't act as an automatic fact checker.
OK, let me put it this way.
On all of them.
Of course,
when the
and
Met,
I'm not asking you to.
The Met are looking at those facts.
To you. If he was in the flat singing "The Winner Takes It All" with his missus, when he said that he didn't know about any parties, he misled Parliament, should he resign?
Again, you're asking a hypothetical question.
No,
I think during the pandemic.
Why is that hypothetical?
Well, during the pandemic, I think there were some moments when I may have been sitting at home and working, listening to music and concentrating on my job while at the same time.
Were you eating birthday cake?
No, but the whole point of...
Was somebody singing happy birthday to you?
Well, the whole point of the Met investigation is that you don't have to ask and I don't have to ask. Officers can ask and they can make sure that they establish all the information, and once they've concluded their investigation, then we can know.
Unpack what he said in more detail with Tamara's take at 9 o'clock. But he also talked about PPE. He also talked about Jimmy Savile. That is really developing into quite a row, isn't it? And levelling up.
That's right. On the parties, there's a couple of new revelations today. First of all, in the Telegraph, which claims that this party on the 13th of November, the one where we saw Dominic Cummings earlier in the day leaving Downing Street with his box, his time there was finished. Allegedly, Carrie Johnson, the Prime Minister's wife, hosted a party in their number 10 flat with ABBA songs blaring out. The Telegraph claiming today that the Prime Minister was present for that late-night gathering. I have to say, Kay, that's the one that a lot of Tory MPs are really concerned about, because that's not work, that's a social event in a house. Then you've also got in The Guardian today claims of, in Sue Gray's report, there was one gathering she mentioned that we didn't previously know about in January of last year, of 21, so that's sort of the dark days of the winter lockdown. They're saying that that was actually a leaving do for a senior civil servant, and they say that Boris Johnson attended that one too. So that's another one that the PM is being placed at the centre of. So this very much not going away. And then on top of that, yes, you've got this row over Jimmy Savile. The Prime Minister saying on Monday that hitting out at Keir Starmer, saying he failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile when he was Director of Public Prosecutions, something that people who were there say is not true, he would have known nothing about, and now having members of his cabinet double down on it.
OK. Tomorrow for now, thanks very much. Tomorrow's Take 9 o'clock.
See you then.
Very much looking forward to it. Thank you. See you again at the top of the 8 as well. Meantime, the government is to publish its long-awaited levelling up plan to narrow the gap between richer and poorer parts of the UK. But what will this actually look like for communities? The Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, is with us now. Hi, Mr. Street. Thank you for joining us on the programme. What will it mean to you?
Yes, good morning to Kay. Great to be on with you. So what it means to citizens here, rather more important than to me, is, of course, better opportunities, better outcomes in life. So whether that's better transport connections, better schools, better skills in their colleges, or ultimately better jobs through a more vibrant private sector. All the things that I've been talking about ultimately come together to deliver that.
How quickly, though?
Oh, some things are already happening. If you take the transport piece, we've already been agreed £1 billion of new cash with the government already just at the end of last year. If you take what's going on in brownfield remediation, regenerating communities in derelict old industrial spaces, that's happening now. But some of the things are a much longer burn. I accept that. Take all the work that's talked about research and development, getting more money spent here, less concentration on London and the South East. That takes time, but in time that will definitely drive new businesses in new sectors to locate here in the West Midlands.
Yeah, but a lot of people will need to see a bit of action, won't they, ahead of the next election?
Yeah, I don't question that. And that's why I say some things are already happening, actually. So if you travel across the West Midlands, you will see you'll see railway stations, tram extensions already happening. You will see derelict industrial sites coming back to life. You'll see new colleges being built, like the new wonderful Institute of Technology in Dudley. That is there to see now. But actually what the white paper does today is say, how can we move beyond what you might call a patchwork of what we've done already to something much, much more complete that drives the private sector economic recovery in these regions?
How much longer does this Prime Minister have in office?
That's up to him to demonstrate the answer to that question. It all depends on what actions he now takes, frankly. He's given an apology, a fulsome apology, but my own view is he now has to follow through on that and show that he genuinely means it, and genuinely change will occur. And if that occurs, then the answer to your question will be in the hands of the British electorate.
What if he broke the law? Does he still have your 100% support?
If he breaks the law, of course, as I've said before, they will. There is the police investigation. We don't actually know yet if the Prime Minister personally is being investigated by the police, but if so, there'll obviously be consequences, as is with any other citizen.
What about if he misled Parliament?
Well, I'm not a parliamentarian, but I do know this just from seeing the rules very clearly, that the Prime Minister must know that would be a very, very serious allegation. And I'm sure that he's been very, very careful in what he said to Parliament because he understands the gravity of that.
And you believe him when he says that he didn't attend any parties?
I can't know the answer to that, can I, about this event on the 13th of November, I think the one that you're talking about.
I suppose you can, in that you can say, sorry to interrupt, but in that you can say, I trust the Prime Minister, so if he tells me this, I believe him.
And my honest answer to that question is, yes, I do believe that. I believe that that what you see from a man in a very difficult situation this week, and no one is condoning it. What happened was bad, was wrong. Frankly, from where I sit, was pretty unbelievable. And I share the feeling of most of my constituents that this is just inexplicable. But I do see someone who is genuinely remorseful, is understanding the lessons that have to be drawn. And I like to believe that I can trust my Prime Minister.
Just to clarify, what do you think was unbelievable? Sorry.
That it actually happened, that that the events that are in the Sue Gray report were as described, because we all lived under very different arrangements. I mean, my role is tiny compared to the Prime Minister's, I understand that. But doing a public role like this, you do have to think about what's appropriate, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. We cancelled lots of things. So that's why I say it's unbelievable that it's happened. But that's now a matter of public record from Sue Gray. And what we've heard from the Prime Minister is his reaction to it. And what we've now got to see is how he follows through on that.
But from reading what Sue Gray has said, he broke the rules, didn't he?
it would appear that he broke the rules around lockdowns were broken, yes, and he has given a fulsome apology for that. But you asked me about two other specifics, one about what the police were going to investigate, which we don't know the outcome of yet, and B, you asked me about what he said to Parliament, which again, we don't know the outcome of yet.
No, okay. Well, I think, okay. I'm sure you'll come back and talk to us when we do. But nevertheless, I wonder what the people in your community are thinking about the politicians down here in London at the moment. Do they still support the Prime Minister and the government where you are at the moment?
So I think actually it's very interesting, that question, because it relates the first half of the interview about levelling up to this. Actually, what people here say is it has led to a distrust of politicians in London, absolutely no question, and probably politicians across the piece. But actually what people say to me is what you've got to do as our local leader is get on and deliver. Prove that voting Conservative in the mayoral election and actually in the general election is going to deliver those better life chances, that we are going to get those things we're talking about. And that is my singular mission. And honestly, I think today the moves that Michael Gove is putting in place will help us do that.
It's always great to talk to you, Mr. Street. Thank you for sparing us the time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Opening ceremony for the Beijing Winter Olympics takes place this Friday, and COVID preparations are in full swing. Here's Tom.
This was always going to be a different Winter Olympics. One where nearly all the snow is artificial, where there are no tickets on sale for spectators, and one which has been boycotted by Western governments. But it's also one in the middle of a COVID-19 surge in China. Districts across Beijing are conducting mass testing and locking down neighborhoods. And there have been lockdowns across the country. Officials have been typically zealous in their pursuit of what's called a dynamic zero COVID policy, sometimes fighting COVID with literal fire, or sending dozens of young children to quarantine. As a result, the Olympics are being held in the closed-loop system, keeping athletes and anyone else coming for the Games and potentially bringing COVID isolated from the rest of the country. This was one of the athletes' villages before the loop closed.
所以运动员在奥运村的这个公共场所需要按照防疫手册的要求来做好个人防护和一些防疫措施。
And so it's Fortress Olympia. Officials have even told Beijing residents not to help Olympic vehicles involved in traffic accidents for fear of breaking the loop.
It's a pretty formidable barrier. What they've done is create a city within a city, actually a country within a country, because over that barrier is effectively international territory carved out of the heart of Beijing.
And ordinary members of the public cannot buy tickets to events. Only those selected by the Chinese Communist Party can attend. Despite all that, locals are still excited and proud that their city will be the first to host a summer and winter Olympics.
因为我喜欢奥运会里头的花样滑冰和短道速滑。
你自己会滑吗？滑冰吗？
原来计划说是，假如说冬奥会很荣耀很进去想看一看。可是呢，但是这个现在疫情稍微有一点，那么就说我们遵守国家的响应号召。
It is a tense moment in Beijing, if not a panicked one. Authorities will be relieved if they can focus on the sport instead of COVID. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, Beijing.
The Winter Olympics torch relay has started in Beijing as the fortress-like city prepares to host the global sporting event, despite boycotts by world leaders and COVID-19. This morning, the torch set off and will be carried by more than 1,000 torch bearers via the various competition areas in Beijing and the nearby city of Jiangsu before the opening ceremony on Friday evening. Soldiers and villagers on Ukraine's eastern front have told Sky News that they're seeing more activity from pro-Russian separatists there. Our chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey reports from the Luhansk region.
The last kilometre or so to the frontline trenches of this conflict in eastern Ukraine is always by foot. The separatist positions are never far away. The trenches that now stretch hundreds of miles in higgledy-piggledy length are defensive. But essentially, they're an overwatch system to keep an eye on the movement of the Russian-backed separatists and, more importantly, any incursion by the Russian army.
And there's been more activity? At night particularly, yeah? We're surrounded.
Conditions here are miserable and dangerous. The troop commander explained our position, essentially in the middle of the separatists.
Understood, understood.
The soldiers say in recent weeks there's been more activity and more firing from the separatist side. The snowy hillock and towers are their opponents' lines. It really isn't far at all. It is easy to forget that this conflict has been going on since 2014. The scars of the fighting are everywhere. Abandoned and destroyed buildings litter the landscape. The villages and towns on the front line aren't always deserted, but they're very quiet now, and few people venture outside if they can avoid it.
Well, these towns in eastern Ukraine are very remote, but they were very, very busy. Those things have changed now because they are actually the front line. When you see things like this, such as houses that took direct hits by Grat rockets from the separatist side, it's easy to understand why most people have decided to get out of town. The only ones who have stayed behind now are really those who can't get out and have got nowhere to go.
While the diplomatic moves and prime ministerial meetings take place, both in Ukraine and abroad, the fact is that the two sides are stuck, battle lines drawn. And to them, there's nothing to suggest things will change.
От этих встреч я ничего не ожидаю. Как я был здесь на посту, я таки буду. Ничего для меня не изменится.
There is a real sense that this freezing front line is frozen, waiting for some sort of breakthrough that could relieve the tension. That, or another round of bloodshed. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Eastern Ukraine.
Well, joined now by the former ambassador of Ukraine to the EU, and that's Konstantin Yelitseyev. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the programme this morning. What did you make of the meeting yesterday between our leader, Boris Johnson, and the leader of the Ukraine?
Yes, good morning. First of all, we appreciate very much that Prime Minister Johnson paid a visit to Ukraine to an important period of a very important period of history for the whole Europe, because currently the question of war and peace in Europe is now being decided exactly in Ukraine. And Ukraine is the last puzzle in Putin's geopolitical game in order to revive the Soviet Union. That is why this visit of Prime Minister of UK was very timely. And we appreciate very much what the UK is currently doing in order to help Ukraine to strengthen Ukraine's resilience by providing defensive lethal weapons. Now, what we do expect from the UK and from the unity is to introduction of preventive sanctions against Russia, because Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2014 and violated all of international order on which post-Cold world was based. So that is why we on solidarity with Ukraine of the whole international community, and we count very much on unprecedented transatlantic unity, because this is what Putin is afraid of.
We have one or two challenges, Mr. Ambassador, with our communication with Ukraine this morning, but we will persevere for now, if you'll indulge us. Well, the Prime Minister said a Russian invasion would be a political and humanitarian disaster, in his words. How do we avoid that eventuality?
Yes, how we can avoid? My appeal to everybody: do not be afraid to surprise Putin. Putin is afraid of transatlantic unity, which is a big prerequisite for sanctions, because Russia will weaken Russian potential to go with the war against Ukraine. Second, we need to provide to get help from the international community, namely to strengthen security and military and defensive potential of Ukraine by providing weaponry. Thirdly, we need to stop Nord Stream 2. This is gas pipeline system which was built by Russia, bypassing Ukrainian territory to Germany. And of course, what we need also, this is the security guarantees. And the best security guarantees is Ukraine's membership in NATO. This is what Putin is afraid about. In my view, providing Ukraine with a membership action plan with NATO would be a biggest blow for Putin and biggest sanctions against Putin. So this is the key prerequisite, the key factors which will provide us with a victory. And of course, another very important point: do not to make any concessions for Putin, because if Ukraine fails, the whole international community will fail. So Ukraine currently is ready to fight against Russian aggression. Now, what we do expect again, real solidarity of the whole world with Ukraine.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for taking the time to join us on The Breakfast Show on Sky News this morning. Thank you. Quick look at the weather for you.
Look forward to brighter skies. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Next few days will be mild with some rain around at times, but Friday looks briefly colder.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Some of the more eye-catching stories from this morning's papers for you. Here we go. Lots of us will love the aroma of scented candles, but how much are you willing to pay? They're expensive, aren't they? Well, this one on sale in Selfridges has been getting shoppers on their nerves, certainly, coming at a whopping £600. Those with money to burn can get their hands on the collaboration between Parisian brands Trudon and Balmain. There you go, 600 quid for that one. What else have we got for you today? We can go to the Mail as well. He's been painting it black with the Rolling Stones for nearly half a century, and now the guitarist turned amateur artist Ronnie Wood may be about receiving royal recognition for his portraits. There you go. And one more for you, I think, as well, maybe. There you go. That is a dolphin at the side of a huge, huge, huge boat. Or is it a ship? I never know. Somebody will be upset about it. Still to come on the programme for you this morning, a healthy dose of eating salad. We'll be telling you about this. This rabbit is taking on this human eating salad. I mean, what else is there to say, frankly? I love it. I love it. Yeah, the rabbit doesn't like it. He needs a bit more dressing on it, doesn't he? Coming up in the next hour, we're going to be telling you what the government minister has been saying to us today, and also hearing from Lisa Nundy. That to come in just a second.